Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome members, officers, and members of the public watching at home to this Finance, Audit and Risk Committee. The committee plays an important role in the overall governance of the Council. Good governance has many benefits, including helping the Council to make effective decisions, improve performance, and be able to respond to risks and opportunities. Can I invite the committee member and scrutiny officer to explain how proceedings will work and confirm that officers in remote attendance are present?
Can I confirm the following officers can hear us and can be heard? Salma Eunice.
Yes, I can, thank you.
If a member wishes to speak, they should use the speak button located on their microphone unit. The microphone unit will turn green. When the chair invites you to speak, the microphone will be made live and will turn red. You will then be able to speak. When requested to vote, voting will be done via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members vote will be shown on the screens around the room, and the results will be visible on the YouTube live stream. In the event of a tie, the chair will have the casting vote. Are there any questions before we start the meeting? No, I'll hand back to the chair then.
Thank you. Apologies for absence. I've received apologies for absence from Councillor Stephen Patmore and Councillor Dominic Griffiths. Are there any further apologies? Minutes, 12th of March 2025. I'd like to propose that we take as read and approve as a true record the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of March 2025. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Willoughby, thank you. Are there any comments on the minutes? No, in which case could we please move to the vote?
That's carried.
Thank you. Notification of other business. No other business has been notified. Chair's announcements. In accordance with Council policy, this meeting is being recorded and the recording will be available to view on ModGov or via the NHDC YouTube channel. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about this and speaking rights is set out under Chair's announcements on the agenda. For the purpose of clarification, 4.8.23a of the Constitution does not apply to this meeting. Therefore, a member may leave the room during the debate and consideration of that item and be able to vote. However, please be mindful of the business on the agenda and, wherever possible, leave at an appropriate point in the proceedings. Public participation. We have no public participation this evening. So, move on to item number 6, SIAS Annual Assurance Statement and Internal Audit Annual Report 2024-25. Hand over to Chris Wood to present.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm having my usual surreal experience. I was spooning pesto on my son's pasta about half an hour ago, and now I'm sitting presenting to Audit Committee. So it's one of those classic out-of-body experiences. But nonetheless, I bring you more pertinently to the SIAS Annual Assurance Statement and Annual Report. So this represents the blood, sweat and tears of 24-25. All the year's audit work is summarised here, all conducted and nearly finished, and all in the name of providing you with an annual assurance opinion. So you'll note the biggest headline in this report is the reasonable overall assurance opinion for the authority, based on the work that we've outlined in this report. You'll notice from KPIs, for example, that we are still 2 audits short on delivering last year, one of which is about to start. I've just got some traction on it this afternoon with the team concerned, and another which the field work, so that's homelessness, is about to start, and the new finance system from last year. Ian is no doubt being harassed, should we say, by some of our auditors to get a meeting in to discuss the outcomes of the field work. So I think what I might do, take the report as read. There's a couple of other things I have to take you through. Professional standards require it. So you will have noticed the first part of the report includes an enormous table about the global internal audit standards. Those all took effect from the 1st of April this year. Oops, losing my track of thoughts there. Sorry, I'm just trying to think what I wanted to say there about the global internal audit standards. So not a lot has changed compared to the public sector internal audit standards that were in place last year, despite the ream of new material that's written there. So you won't notice, those of you who were on the committee last year, too much change in this report. However, a few things to tell you in relation to those standards. I have to confirm to you that the qualifications of myself and the team met the standards. I'm a qualified accountant and internal auditor. I have to confirm to you that SIAS maintained its independence during the year in giving its opinion, and there was no limitation on our scope and resources. I might pause just for a second, and one of the things you'll notice on the cover of the report is that you need to seek management assurance that there were no limitations on the scope of our work or resources. And can I just ask Ian to confirm as much to the committee?
I would like to confirm we've not placed any limitations to scope on the work of SIAS, and indeed we hope we've encouraged them to do their work and to investigate areas where they want to see fit to investigate.
Thank you. So another piece of the puzzle that I have to talk to you about is our annual self-assessment. So following our annual self-assessment against the global internal audit standards, we've self-assessed as generally conforms, which is the highest area of conformity, if you want, or the level of conformity. You might well expect us to self-assess that way, but we have an external quality assessment coming up in 2026, and that will hopefully agree with our self-assessments. The standards require that we have those every 5 years, and as you've seen in the report, we were generally conformed the last time round after addressing a couple of small matters to do with our audit charter. I think, speaking of audit charters, that's the last thing I need you to approve in this report. It's our constitution, if you want. It sets out our rights and responsibilities to carry out our work, and approval by the audit committee gives your support to us and authority to us to carry out our work in the authority. So it's quite important you approve that for us each year. So I've done all the regulatory bits. Talk to you about our overall assurance opinion. There's a lot in the table summarizing outcomes of all our opinions, all of our recommendations. This year, one of the new things we've done is the assurance mapping exercise, which most of you have had a report on during the course of the year, but that's also helped in the provision of my opinion. The outcomes of that assurance mapping exercise were quite positive and shows that the council has quite a strong assurance framework around its key risks and projects. And the last little thing which is new is the analysis of our root cause analysis, which the standards required that we introduce, and we started doing that late in Q3, so we haven't got a full year's analysis there, but outcomes of that didn't show too many patterns of concern. Perhaps I'd better pause there and take some questions. I think I've covered all the things I'm supposed to.
Thank you very much, Chris. Are there any questions from the committee? Councillor Ward.
Oh, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Chris. I've got a couple of questions, but a macro question first. On page 22 of the audit report, it's got the table that's highlighting, so I'm trying to look at it and speak at the same time, highlighting the number of recommendations on risk level that you found, and it compares it to the previous year. I was just noting that whilst the total number of medium level recommendations went down. The number of high level recommendations you found went up significantly, albeit a low number. I was just wondering if you could comment on the overall control environment, whether you think that's indicative of anything we should be concerned about paying attention to or not.
Thank you for the question, Councillor. I'm going to lean to or not on this occasion. It's quite difficult sometimes because audit plans vary from year to year, and you seldom have the same audits in the same areas in any audit plan on a year-on-year basis. So the outcomes of any audit, it's quite difficult sometimes to compare apples. It isn't apples and apples, it's apples and pears. I still like the tables in there because sometimes there is a picture to tell. Sometimes you can get quite a significant fluctuation. For instance, 30 total recommendations in one year and 70 in the next, but that might be the nature of the projects you looked at in one year and compared to the previous. So I'm not reading too much into movements there. I think they're all within acceptable parameters. Demonstrate still a reasonably strong control environment. I think the one that jumps out in percentage terms, if not absolute terms, is just the high priority recommendations, which I always like to focus on. There are only 7 in total, but they did climb from 3. But as you know, I've reported on those to this committee through the year, and over half of them have been implemented now, which is always reassuring.
Thank you.
Hopefully I've answered your question somewhere in there.
Yeah, I've got a follow-up, if I can ask that, Chair, now. Related, and this is the matter I emailed Ian Cooper about a couple of days ago, and it relates to the high priority recommendation. So there were 2 that came out of the estates audit. Originally, that was, I think the audit was in July last year. It came to FAR here in September. There were updates, I think, in latter half of the year, and in February it was still noted that there was good progress, but that one was open and there was a delay on another one. But it was advised that one of them would be closed by March. So I was looking, it's probably really for the directors, not so much Chris, but just progress on, given that's been a very long time now and they were overdue for quite a long time from the original dates. Have those things been addressed now? And if not, when will they be, please?
Yeah, thank you for the warning on the question. Allow me to go to the manager involved and get a proper update for you. So yeah, I've checked that into details of that. Not quite there yet. Target date is now the end of this month, so hopefully almost there. So just to recap, they're both of them broadly linked to a kind of a spreadsheet database of the all the positions on rent renewals and making sure those happen in a timely manner. Bringing together kind of data sources to achieve that. So they're almost there with that. They've done most of it. What they've done so far has allowed them to chase and prioritize some of the key rent reviews, but by the end of this month, they will be there. So I will keep an eye on them in a nice way and make sure that does happen by that date. So hopefully by the next time we get to the next committee, we can confirm that we are all done. And then we can start to use that data to a great degree. Some of the plans around that is to allow us to do more reporting on where we are rent reviews, that kind of leadership team, and also look at how that links into income. So some of the bit was around, we might be losing income if we are not doing rent reviews on time. And also ultimately looking at whether there's a kind of a better system and a spreadsheet that's cost effective, just a database to then trigger those rent reviews automatically rather than look down a spreadsheet and filter the columns to find out what's coming due.
Oh, thank you.
Your light's gone on. Sorry, Chair. Just to add to that, as I said in March, the audit plan for this year includes a detailed evidence-based follow-up of all those high priority recommendations. So I suspect the timing will be once it's been confirmed those have been implemented, we will go in and confirm as much and review the evidence accordingly.
Thank you very much. Are there any further questions? Councillor Willoughby.
Thank you, Chair. It's really a point of clarification, actually. I'm just a little bit confused about this new report for root causes. Could you please just get a little bit more background on what it's there to achieve?
Thank you. So the new global internal audit standards require us to determine what the root cause of something we find is. So why did it really happen? We've attempted to categorize that for ease of understanding into the categories you see described in the table at section 3 and in the appendix. Probably a work in progress for us to understand, but one of the models of root cause analysis, for example, is asking the 5 whys. Someone says, why, this has happened, and you go, why did it happen? And they give you an answer and you go, well, why did that happen? And it's trying to understand why something really took place, not the sort of immediate cause, but what's the underlying cause of something. We then are trying to categorize that, helps analysis and understanding, and ultimately looking for patterns. And they're one of the most common in local government, is actually the top one in that table at 3.13 of resources, which boils down to capacity and of officers, whether there's enough funding to achieve something, and universally across the piece, not necessarily just here. That is the most common, and in fact you could attribute many things in local government to an absence of resources at times, but somewhere in there I hope that's begun to explain. We had to do a whole training course on this for our team for a couple of hours, so at some point if you made a request I could bore you with that, but hopefully it's begun to explain what root cause analysis is and why we do it, and sort of it's trying to get down to the real reasons why something's happened.
Okay, thank you.
Council Ward.
Oh, thank you. Just to follow up on that, I did. I suspected that was going to be your answer. Now I'm just familiar with some of these things. I was just wondering what the governance. Do you know what the governance category? What sort of things fall into the governance category? Because that's the highest one on there, and that feels like if we were to say the biggest underlying root cause of problems is governance, that feels uncomfortable. So I was just wondering what that translates into. What sorts of things?
It's quite a broad category. Oh, yep, it's on. It's quite a broad category. It might help if you looked at the page 20, my page 20, page 32, I think it is, of the pack. Appendix C just gives the definitions.
Yes, sorry, I missed that.
It's, I mean, ultimately governance is about all those structures and policies and strategies and boards and all those type of things. That there's a nice phrase I always use for governance. It's the kind of things that help us do the right things in the right way at the right time for the right people. And that means having all the right policies in place to help people, all the right structures and boards to make things happen, the right committees, what we're doing tonight as a form of governance. So it's so somewhere in that structure is something's gone awry. I'm not too concerned at this point because this is an incomplete picture, not based on a full year. And we've also noticed, rolling this out, that sometimes things can fall across more than one category. So we're learning about this as we go.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe, Chair, it would be a suggestion for the future, just to, once we have more data on that, to look at if there's any big lumps of root causes coming out. We should have, look in the council as to is there anything we should be doing about that?
Yeah, I mean, if I suppose, Chris, the question there would be, is this something you're intending to sort of track throughout the year then? So as audits are done, do the root cause analysis as you go through, and then potentially could we look at doing a sort of mid-year look again if the data is available at that point, to just, even if it is simply a check that says actually, there's no overall pattern, but if there is, then at least that to present.
Yes, I think that can be done. It does depend how many final reports we issue. So each time a final report comes out, the members of this committee get it, and you'll see root cause analysis in the recommendations table and the action plan for those. I think if we did do a mid-year one, can be quite difficult. A lot of our audits, as you've seen, slide into Q3 and Q4 and get done quite rapidly at that point. And the more you have, the more patterns you can discern. But it doesn't stop us seeing how many final reports are issued in perhaps December, I would say. And we could put a similar table together.
Councillor Ward, does that sound good?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you again,
That will
Chris.
form part of our progress updates that you get quarterly, I think. So.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chris. Councillor Brown.
Just sort of follow on, just to check that I understood you right. So these instances are not there could be more than one instance or root cause per issue. Is that right? So this is not, there are not 21, there are fewer. I just wondered if it would be helpful to know how many have multiple root causes and how they relate to one another. Because did I understand you right? You were saying that?
Yes, correct. There's not too many in that small sample there, but I know we've had more than one report where there's at least one recommendation we felt it probably had multiple root causes all working together, which is probably what happens in life. Things aren't always neatly pigeonholed as we'd like. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from the committee? John Cannon.
Thanks, Chair. Just following up on a previous minute, really, from a prior meeting regarding the estates audit. I remember there was a recommendation to improve a control log tracking collections. And the question in the prior minutes was whether that might improve the collection rate and income, or if it is just functioning as a control log for office purposes. I just wonder, is there a distinction that we can now see between back office practice or actual financial impact? It's really one of the directors.
Yeah, it kind of links back to the question that Councillor Ward asked in terms of, we're getting there with that kind of that log and that spreadsheet. I think we've almost finalised it. I think there have been some wins coming out of that and making sure that we are focusing on the bigger prize in terms of getting the rent reviews done with higher value rents and higher level potential increases. But haven't got a number there yet. But I think as we've got that developed, we can then start to track those through and get those reports. And ultimately, they'll be reflected in our budget monitoring reports. But it's kind of useful to kind of see that earlier insight from that more directly. And the plans that is reported into the leadership team, so therefore can be made available to the committee as well.
Thanks. Sorry, I hadn't made the link between that particular case and Councillor Ward's question. It was indeed the same one. So good. Thank you.
Thank you all. Any further questions at all from the committee? If not, then the recommendations are 2.1, to note the annual assurance statement and internal audit annual report. 2.2, note the results of the self-assessment required by the Global Internal Audit Standards and the Quality Assurance and Improvement Programme. 2.3, approve the SIAS Audit Charter for 2025-26. 2.4, seek management assurance that the scope and resource for internal audit were not subject to inappropriate limitations in 2024-25. Can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Publicingham, thank you. And seconder. Oh, Councillor Ward, thank you.
Second it.
Thank you. Is there any debate at all? Can't see any, so could we please move to the vote?
That's carried.
Thank you very much. And thank you again, Chris. Move on to item 7, the External Audit Plan and Strategy 24-25. Hand over to Salma Yunus to present.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'm Salma Yunus. I'm the the audit director from KPMG. I'm replacing Jess Hargreaves, who you might remember from last year. So I'll be taking on the engagement from Jess. So it's nice to meet you all virtually today. I am based in the Leeds office, which is why today I think I offered to do this virtually. We are making good progress in terms of our 24-25 audit. You'll recall, obviously, because of the backstop and because of the backlog, there were some delays in terms of the 23-24 audit, and that was only signed off just a couple of months ago at the end of February. So as a result, that has impacted the 24-25 audit as well. But we do have an indicative audit plan for you today, just setting out the significant audit risks that we've identified that will then determine the audit work that we will perform as part of our audit of your statement of accounts. Just want to bring your attention to page 3 of our audit plan, which is page 49 of the pack. And this slide is about the impact of the backstop on the audit. And just to kind of reiterate really that obviously because of the impact on the 23-24 audit opinion and that audit being disclaimed, and as a result, there are some opening balances that will be in your statement of accounts that we won't have assurance over. So as a result, the 24-25 audit will also be modified. There is some work ongoing within the sector in terms of determining this additional work that needs to be done to kind of build back assurance within local government audits as well. So I'll keep you updated on that in terms of that work and liaise with Ian and his team as well in terms of what that means specifically for the council. So if we go on to page 6 of our plan, which is page 52 of the pack. So this sets out those significant audit risks that I've just mentioned in terms of the risks that we've identified for the audit of the statement of accounts. So those 4 that we've listed there, again, they're typical of a district council. There's nothing kind of entity specific there. So you'll see the valuation of land and buildings, because that is a significant estimate. Valuation of investment property, again, because there is uncertainty and estimation involved in arriving at that valuation. Similarly, with valuation of the post-retirement benefit obligations as well. Again, that's a significant estimate, and there's various assumptions that are involved in arriving at that valuation. And then the last significant audit risk there is around management override of controls. And this is a standard audit risk that we are required to perform work on for all financial statement audits. The other audit risk that we've flagged is around the general ledger migration. So the council moved to a new ledger system during 24-25. And as a result, there's data transfer from the old system into the new system. And then that obviously impacts the numbers that are then going to get into your statement of accounts. And we need to understand how that's been project managed, how that process has been overseen, so that we can place reliance basically on the figures that are coming out of your new general ledger system. And to support us in that, we'll be using our IT specialist team, who have experience of working on various general ledger migration projects as well. The other element of our work is around the value for money aspect. So this is where we look at 3 domains and the council's arrangements around in relation to those domains. So the plan that you see here sets out our approach for value for money. However, our work is ongoing at the moment, so you haven't got our value for money risk assessment. But once that work is complete, we will bring that to a future committee meeting here. That was all I was going to propose to cover, assuming that the documents are being read, but I'm happy to take any comments or queries.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from the committee? John Cannon.
Thank you, and thank you for the paper. Maybe it's 2 questions inspired by the paper rather than about the paper. So they are, firstly, regarding the new general ledger, I appreciate the data migration has taken place. Is the new general ledger system that it came to actually proven? Can anyone give us some comfort on the general ledger product that has been deployed, that's received the data? And the second question is about the significant risk regarding expenditure recognition. No significant risk this year. I wonder what the prospects are for the future, where expenditure might increase with big projects like Churchgate? And that's a question that drives to the timing of expenditure and how much the council might incur, whether that might be in this audit year or another one. There's two questions there, please.
Thank you. I'm wondering if for the general ledger system question, I don't know if the Director of Resources wants to respond on that.
I will do. Probably unfair to make you respond on that one. Yeah, I'm confident the system we've got is robust. It is a software system that is used by a number of local authorities. We went through a thorough procurement exercise to obtain it, full evaluation of the system against all the competitors, including the one that we already had. So yeah, obviously any software system takes a lot of setting up. And that is, yeah, I'm not going to say it's all finished. There's still stuff going on in the background that we're kind of trying to make sure we get back up to track with. You'll sort of see some of the stuff in the later reports, the revenue monitor report. There's some stuff still going around that, but we are getting there. And ultimately, it is a robust system that does have the necessary controls in it to make sure that all transactions are fully accounted for, and will ultimately allow us to have better processes and better automation to kind of hopefully make things both smoother and have better governance on them.
And if there aren't any follow-up questions to that response, in terms of the expenditure recognition risk, so I suppose a bit of background on the nature of this risk. So as I mentioned earlier, the management override of controls is a mandatory audit risk that we have to perform at all audits. Similarly, there's a revenue recognition risk. But what happens for public sector organisations, because of the nature of their revenue, there isn't really, you don't see a heightened risk around revenue recognition. So it's flipped over into expenditure. So this year when we've assessed it, we've determined that there isn't that expenditure recognition risk, and it's more of a fraudulent expenditure recognition risk. If we had any concerns about general spend, then we could identify that as another area of focus, and then we would focus on that. So, for example, the example that you gave was Churchgate. So, going forward, if as part of our audit work, we identified, yep, it's a large project, significant project, there's funds allocated to it, but there's a risk that overspends might occur, or there's a risk that the project's not being managed appropriately, then we could identify that as another audit area, but it wouldn't necessarily be here as a significant audit risk from a fraudulent expenditure recognition risk, unless something came through from our risk assessment that suggested there was something along those lines.
Thank you for those answers. It's helpful. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Any further questions at all from the committee? Don't believe there are. So in which case then the recommendation is to note the external audit plan and strategy 24-25. Can I please have a proposer? Councillor Willer. Councillor Wilby, thank you. And seconder. Councillor Peter-Singham, thank you very much. Is there any debate at all? Not seeing anything. So in which case then, could we please move to the vote?
That's carried.
Great, thank you very much. And thank you very much, Salma, as well, for your time this evening.
Thank you.
Move on to item number 8. Draft Annual Governance Statement 2024-25 and Action Plan for 2025-26. Georgina Chapman to present.
Thank you. Yes, so this is the draft annual governance statement for the 24-25 period, which includes an action plan for the 25-26 period. This is the committee's chance to comment on the draft before we bring back the final version, which will come at the point when the statement of accounts for the same period is ready. The draft has been sent to Shared Anti-Fraud Service, it's been sent to the external auditors, and it's also been sent to the Shared Internal Audit Service, and we had quite a lot of detailed comments from Chris, which have already been incorporated, which was lovely. And the assessment identified no significant governance issues, but obviously there's always room for improvement, and that's the point of the action plan. So if I kind of just zoom down to the action plan, we've got various actions on there, some around improving completion rates of essential training for staff. There's various things on there around kind of training to ensure that those deputising for particular officers understand the relevant constitutional powers they can exercise, review of sub-delegations, post-organisational restructure. There's a few things on there around cybersecurity, because that's a key risk for the council. So training on cybersecurity and developing and testing the cyber resilience plan. There's an action around implementing the corporate peer challenge action plan. We've carried over the actions that we had last year around social value, because I think they were the only actions from last year's action plan that weren't fully completed. So those have been kind of carried over. And then a few actions around gender pay gap, implementing and monitoring the sustainability strategy, reviewing the process for considering and reporting equality and environmental implications, and also reviewing the comments, compliments and complaints policy to incorporate reporting mechanisms to the monitoring officer and to other statutory officers. So I think that's the gist. So happy to take any comments or questions or anything that you think should be incorporated into the final version. And just lastly to note, I think we're going to take the same approach that we've taken previously. Obviously, this is the action plan for 25-26, but we're already partway through. So we're not going to wait for the final version. We're just going to get started on this action plan straight away, if you're happy with that.
Thank you very much. Any questions at all from the committee? Councillor Ward.
Thank you. It's very, very thorough. Just referring specifically to that action plan you're talking about. I know you said it's been discussed amongst numerous people. Are all these actions kind of agreed and allocated to the specific service directors, and that they're aware and agreed them?
So we take the long self-assessment document, which informs this statement, to leadership team, and we discuss actions there with them that they'd like to see as part of the action plan. And then we sent round this kind of short version to the leadership team once we've kind of got all the ideas together, and that's their chance to sort of put their hand up and say, no, I don't want to do that, or yes, that's fine. So everybody should have seen this, and I did send the kind of final version of the action plan to the chief executive and the leader of the council before this was all uploaded, so they should have seen it and happy with it.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Brown.
So following on from that, how is it monitored?
The action plan.
The progress on the action plan.
So last year, what we did was we brought you an update. We put the actions in a table and we brought FAR an update, I think in the autumn perhaps, and then we brought it again early 2025. So we can do the same thing this time, if that helps.
So that's twice during the year?
I think so, yeah.
Yes.
I think that was right.
Are other bodies monitoring it as well as FAR?
I mean, when I collect the monitoring for FAR, you're the only kind of committee that will get the full thing. But if there's things that are kind of stuck or not happening or whatever, that would be probably when I'd contact leadership team. But you're the body that's monitoring it.
Yeah, okay, but it would be monitored within the directorates as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Nope. In which case then, the recommendation is that the committee review and comment on the draft AGS and action plan at Appendix A. Can I please have a proposer? Oh, Councillor Poopler singing, thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Ward. Thank you very much.
Second.
Is there any debate from the committee? Councillor Brown.
I'd just like to say thank you for a very clear and well formatted report that's really easy to read and absorb. Thank you very much.
I say the only thing to add then would be, I think, based on what you said before, in terms of no point waiting around for it to get completed. I think undertaking everything as soon as possible clearly the best way to go.
Yeah.
Anything else from the committee at all? If not, then can we please move to the vote?
That's carried.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Georgina. Move on to item 9 now, the revenue budget outturn 2024-25. Hand over to Ian Cooper to present.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start off by saying that because we have a 2-week gap between FAR and Cabinet this cycle, I think we're going to continue that throughout some of the year. We have made some changes between the report you're seeing and the reports going to Cabinet. None of them fundamental, no big numbers, but I will kind of, as I go through, highlight some of the changes we've made, just so you're aware of what Cabinet will be seeing when it goes to them. So, as always, I will focus probably mainly on table 4 to start with, which is the summary of the key variances during the year, during the last quarter. So the first change we've made since the Cabinet version is quite a small one. On the apprentice scheme, towards the end of the year, we identified that we've been overpaying on national insurance for apprentices because there's different national insurance rates depending on the age of apprentices. So we got something back from that, and that's now incorporated numbers at around about an extra sort of 14 or 15,000 pounds on top of what's there. We are requesting to carry forward that entire underspend on that budget, as is noted in the commentary there. We are looking to further extend the number of management trainees we're taking on next year, as well as our apprentices. So the more we can carry forward, the more we can keep on with a similar number of apprentices on top of those management trainees. They're both good in terms of the kind of input they provide to the council. So I think we'd like to get as many of those as we can, particularly as we go for this resource-intensive time for things like local government reorganisation on the agenda. So any capacity we can get, and some big projects as well. So anything we do on that is probably beneficial. Just highlight, as we'll come on to on the next report, our Treasury investment income. We're showing the position there at the end of the year. Haven't shown any ongoing impact of that, although as the next report, we have had capital slippage, and we haven't suddenly spent all that capital on day one of the new year. So there is higher balances than we were forecasting, and interest rates haven't gone down quite as much as we thought they would do yet. So on that basis, probably when we get to quarter 1, I'll be reporting to you there will be some additional income on the Treasury position. But let's see where we end up with by the time we get there first, because Treasury is a strange beast that can go up and down very quickly if interest rates suddenly move. We'll just highlight strategic priorities funds as the next line on there. Again, that's another one we're looking to carry forward. That will give us some capacity, hoping that the government funding in terms of LGR will provide all the funding we need for that. But I think it's best to have a kind of pot to support that if we need it. You'll be pleased to know I'm going to jump some lines now. I'm not going for every single line also, because you'll be very bored if I go for all of them. So jumping on, I will highlight things like the contribution to the sales ledger bad debt provision. You'll notice a quite big increase compared to where we usually are on that bad debt provision. That is due to the new finance system and the fact we have, during the kind of transition and the way the new system works, which tries to automate things more, we have got more stuff going to suspense, and therefore people are making payments where they're ending up there rather than against the correct debt. Rather than chasing people who may have paid and making them very unhappy, the fact we're chasing them when they paid and we haven't realised, we have systems to suspended recovery. That obviously does affect the amount of money we get in. Unfortunately, some people generally just haven't paid and we just need a little reminder. Some people do, unfortunately, wait to get reminded before they pay. So therefore, that suspension does mean we haven't gone paid yet. I am not going to say completely we'll get all the money we would have done, but I think a high likely we'll get pretty much all the money we would have done in. It would be delayed compared to what it would have been. And so expect that bad debt provision to reverse itself during next year as we get the money in that we would usually get in. The next change on the Cabinet version of the report, the next line in relation to the revenues and benefits, government grant income, we're proposing to carry that forward, that 37,000 that's in the report, to provide some additional resource just to get over that last bit of work in relation to the new finance system and getting that suspense account cleared. If we can get that clear, we can get on to kind of moving forward with some of the automation and some of the process benefits that transpires from. I will then jump to additional line we're going to add into the report for the Cabinet version. The Shared Prosperity Fund, the money from government, the UK SPF, the admin money from that. So there was an amount allowed for in that grant to apply towards administration of it, which we did. And that's setting unspent because we haven't reflected that money in the accounts yet. So we'll take the grant income as money that's a contribution towards the staff and resource that went into the administration of it. We didn't increase our staffing to achieve that. We just had to reprioritise because we had to deliver the grant. So that creates an underspend that goes into our general fund budget. So that is kind of the key bits I was going to pick out from that particular table. Obviously, there's lots of stuff in there that generally is at the end of the year. It's quite a long table, so I can try and pick up any questions when I've finished on anything in there. Once you've got to the end of that table, which we do get to eventually, we've got the usual kind of structure of the report where we look at things that have happened during the year. So we look at our carry forwards from the previous year and look for trends in terms of ones that have been carried forward again, of which there are some. So sort of ideally that wouldn't happen, but is symptomatic of kind of, I guess, some of the resource implications we've got where that work hasn't happened yet and has had to be sort of take the back seat compared to other things that have been going on. We then go through our kind of corporate health financial indicators for our income. And I think there's kind of a similar pattern there to we saw at Q3 in terms of the greens and reds on that. So no big change in those. And there are a mixture of reds and greens on there. And then we have the supporting data in terms of the actual numbers of things in there for that year. We then go into our funding position. There were some big numbers in there in relation to business rates. I could spend, or certainly some people could spend quite a long time talking about business rates and how the system whole works. It's a very complicated system, but I will try and give a brief summary of it and why we've got some big numbers in there. So each authority set a baseline level of funding for business rates, and that is an amount they should be able to keep in most situations. The amount you can get can fall below that if you do collect a lot less business rate income than you're forecast to. But we are above that baseline, and so therefore we get to keep some of the share of that growth above that baseline level. Usually that share is quite small, but for a few years now, we've been part of a business rate pool, which allows us to keep more of that money than would usually be the case because we combine with other a couple of other districts in the area and the county council, and they kind of provide a new system that all the numbers are based on, and therefore we get to retain more of any growth in that. Another component of the business rate system is that we have to allow money for any appeals, and there usually is quite a backlog of appeals which go to the VOA, the Valuation Office Agency, to deal with those, and those can be big numbers. And as each year goes past, the chances of any appeals being successful, any new appeals being lodged against those business rates are reduced, and therefore you can say release those appeal provisions, which also creates a benefit. And that's the big benefit you kind of see in the numbers here, is that we are looking to release a big chunk of that because of the time passing. There is also a degree of gamesmanship in the system as well, whereby you try and release the appeals at the right time. If you release appeals while you're in the pool, you get more of the benefit than if you do it when you're outside the pool. And therefore, because we're not in the pool next year, which was the part of a previous report we've discussed, we're choosing to release perhaps a big chunk of those appeals this year completely legitimate, but it does give the benefit gets to us rather than going to central government, which I think we want the money to be here rather than somewhere else. So the benefit is in those numbers and kind of details in those paragraphs. It does take a while for those benefits to flow through. So ultimately that money will flow back to us in kind of our money terms in 26, 27. So that money's there. The other part of the business rate system is we do get business rate reliefs from government. So where they say that businesses don't have to pay as much business rates as usually the case. So they give discounts to certain sectors or certain sizes of businesses. We get reliefs for that sort of grant funding to cover those. That goes into our reserve, and that's detailed in the table of all our reserves, which is in table 9. It is the MHCLG grants reserve, the big numbers there. It is looking like we'll be able to release quite a chunk of that money in terms of in future years. We need to assess full assessment about what we need to kind of cover things we have to pay out in relation to the business rate system and to cover some degree of risk. But there probably is some excess in there, even though we are to release quite a lot, as you've seen in previous reports, to cover the budget in future years already. So there's probably some spare money in there as well. So ultimately, all good news for our general fund, but all flowing through sort of different ways into it rather than directly through the revenue account, which is what the other table is referring to. So that's kind of the position we're in. The other change, just to highlight a small one, so 8.17, there's a list there of all of the so at the beginning of the year, you'll know we set a risk allowance for specific risks in relation to the budget, which goes towards setting the minimum general fund balance. And then throughout the year, we track those risks that come to fruition. So a new additional one to add to the list in 8.17 at the bottom of those bullet points. We have had some costs come through, albeit very small, in relation to the legal costs for a public inquiry for refused planning permission that was taken to appeal. That was only £10,000, but that risk has come through. So we'll, in the cabinet version, we will reflect that in the final report. As is the end of the year report, this not only just goes to cabinet, it also goes to council as well. Council approve the transfers to and from earmarked reserves. So table 9 in paragraph 8.18 provides that list for full council to look at and approve, hopefully approve those transfers to and from reserves as detailed in that table. I've only done a bit of the surface of that report, there's quite a lot in there, but hopefully that's enough to give an introduction. If you've got any questions on any of the stuff I've said or any of the detail in there, please ask.
Thank you very much, Ian. And if that's the skimmed version, I think we'll wait out for the full one. But are there any questions, comments from the committee, please? Council Ward.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, got a couple of specifics, but a general one first. It just occurred to me when I was looking at the summary outturn table on page 94, which I guess is ultimately good news in terms of it's reduced. But what's this is more of a sort of financial control kind of question. There's some quite chunky variances in terms of changing the working budget that the cabinet is approving, a few percent on the budget here and there, given all the debate we had at council last time around the budget, etc. What's the limit on what the cabinet can approve without going back to council, or how does that process work?
Generally, we're still being on the same thing. It is unlimited what cabinet can approve. They can't introduce completely new areas of spend. That has to go as part of the budget process. But if it's an unspend, it's obviously quite often here against budget, mainly for delays, then cabinet can approve that. But maybe if they wanted to do completely new, you'd have to go back to council to approve a new budget because that would sit outside the budget control framework.
Oh, thank you. But I was just giving other people a chance to jump in.
Sorry, you carry on.
The microphone. That's okay. I think the page just after that, page 95, and all the details behind that, it's quite useful, just showing that obviously the impact per service area. I was just interested. Then the kind of one of the biggest underspends is regulatory, and despite its name, I guess that we've underspent. But I think if I've gone through understood the details. Is that because of some of the delays in the town centre strategies? Something that came up in scrutiny last night around the work. Is that? I just wonder what do you know what's driving that?
Yes, in terms of that movement, it's the movement in the last quarter. And yes, they're all on the table there in terms of the bigger variances. But yes, in general, regulatory tends to have quite a lot of slippage towards the end of the year because there's quite a lot of project-based work in that one that can sort of slip. So as we go through the report and try and find the regulatory section, it will be in so page 103 of the pack. We've got all the variances on regulatory detailed there. So we've got some of the, looking at the big numbers there. There's bottom of page 103. We've got planning policy, town centre strategies, got slippage there in terms of work there. So yeah, it's those kind of the project-based works in regulatory that haven't happened and then we slipped into next year.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then on the I guess flip side of that, in terms of things that are over enterprise, it's not huge money, but was kind of significantly over. That's, I think, that's because of we got less income than we were expecting, I think, which basically looks like a cost overrun as opposed to a negative income. It's the other way around, if you know what I mean. But that's the cause behind that, I think.
Yeah, we've got a couple of big numbers in there. We've got the there was a rent review going back to 2011, detailed on page 98, which is kind of a one-off cost in this current year. And then there's the position on Churchgate, sort of highlighted there as well, which is another £85,000 in terms of where we sit on that, in terms of, again, some old stuff in there being resolved. And yeah, there's two big movements in that table relating to enterprise, which would contribute to that overspend.
Okay, cool, thank you. And it shouldn't take too long. Is that right? Good, quick. Just, I know the other thing, the page 102, the Stevenage Leisure liquidation impact. Obviously that's in there. It's quite chunky, and we've taken some out of reserves on that. Do we think we've now understood the complete impact of that across the board, or do you, obviously maybe unknown unknowns, but do we don't think there's any more surprises and skeletons in the cupboard on that one?
No, there's some more costs in relation to the repairs and maintenance obligation. They should have happened before SLL departed the building, so to speak. They'll be picked up during 25, 26. So there might be a bit of overspend against the 25, 26 budget relating to that work that everyone active are now having to do instead of SLL doing it before they left the building. But that will be probably a smaller amount that we're talking about here, and some that will be covered from existing budgets anyway, because it's kind of work that's kind of to a degree cyclical. So therefore, doing it later means it will last longer until it next needs doing. In terms of the other bits in there, that should now be everything. That's kind of that. There's no assumption there about getting any money from SLL in relation to the liquidation. It's clear from what they've already posted and is publicly available, is that there's no money in their SLL to pay anyone other than kind of tax and the debts that take priority over any of our debts. We are assuming we can offset the amount they owe us against the amount we owe them, which is for an outstanding invoice for some of the repairs stuff that happened towards the end of the period. And we think we're fairly confident on the legal grounds for that. But there is that small assumption there, but that's quite small compared to the numbers we're talking about there.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
I just wanted to ask a general question about slippage. So you mentioned that it's quite normal for projects, particularly in regulatory, to slip towards the end of the year. I just wondered how we compare with other councils on that one.
Don't know, actually. I did look into that. I'd have, yeah. Yeah,
it just feels like we're told this year on year, every year there are, I mean, I understand that some projects, there's always going to be some slippage, and nothing's ever going to be perfect. We don't live in an ideal world, but it feels like every year we're told about slippage. Every year there are delays, projects that get pushed back, capital expenditure that has to be put into the next year. And I just wondered, is that, how it compares with other councils? So, well, maybe it's something that we you could find out at some stage if there's any means of comparison. I don't know whether there is, but it'd just be interesting to know how we're doing in a sort of a league table compared with other councils on project slippage.
Yeah, and certainly capital slippage is quite common, but I can't comment on kind of the revenue slippage, I guess, in terms of revenue projects. So yeah, leave it with me. I'll see if I can kind of get some information.
Thank you.
I suppose following on a little bit from that and just thinking back to what came up previously, thinking about root cause analysis, I suppose, it's one of our top risks and it's something we've looked at a while, but again, is it resources that is driving a lot of this again in terms of just whether it is a lack of people or at the moment, for example, where priorities might be shifting with local government reorganisation, are we still looking at that resourcing issue as being the kind of main underlying driver for a lot of this at the moment?
Yeah, certainly things like the town centre strategies, that sits with a person who has got a lot of things to do. Sort of that sits with the sort of manager about parking and that kind of town centre strategies, all that sits in that one team, which has got a very, very small team. And so therefore, things like putting in EV charging and the new parking machines has taken a lot of resource out of that team. And therefore, that's kind of led to slippage on some of our other projects. And some of the work in regulatory has been linked previously to the local plan, and therefore reviews of that and implementing it in the first place has necessarily led to that kind of work slipping until that's all been kind of gone through the machine before it gets out the other side. So I think there are reasons, both resources and other factors that have played in that that have caused it.
Anything else from the committee at all? I think John Cannon, you were next.
Thanks. So just for absolute clarity, in the paper today, we see some further timing differences on the spend. I'm not hearing that there's any risk to the underlying funding for that. The council has got the money and it will spend the money at a different time to what it had planned.
Yeah, that's partly explained by the fact that our general fund balance has gone up for a few reasons, one of which is investment interest returns, which have kind of led to a big buffer there. But yeah, part of that is the fact it's gone up because we haven't spent the money yet. And therefore, in a sense, that balance is sort of artificially high because if we do spend the money on the project we want to do, then therefore it'll go down compared to where it is now. So yes, while some of the underspend is kind of positive, some of it is kind of neutral to kind of a little bit negative in terms of the resources aren't there yet to be able to deliver what we want to deliver.
Thanks. It's good to know we're not in a use it or lose it situation. So that's good. As a follow-up, going to the question on leisure spend, there was a recent news article that there's some unexpected costs for roof repairs at the Hitchin site. Can you just give us a bit more colour on how that's going to be accommodated in our spend? I appreciate this is a revenue spend paper. We're not on capital yet, but can you just paint the picture for us a little bit at this stage?
Yeah, so we took a report to an extraordinary council cabinet meeting a few weeks ago in relation to the public centre decarbonisation works at all our leisure centres, which highlighted the fact that the capital was a little bit over compared to what we hoped it would be, but there were also revenue costs as well, linked to the fact that the facility will need to close for longer than we thought they were going to need to while the works were being undertaken. So the capital works will increase the capital programme. That will eventually flow through to our revenue budget in terms of any interest costs, either lost interest from income we would have earned or external interest costs, at the moment the former. And we will need to incur minimum revenue provision against that as well, which is where we allocate the cost of capital over the life of the project. But also the closure cost will be a direct revenue cost, and that will hit next year's revenue budget. Well, next year, I'll say this year now, in terms of 25-26 revenue budget. So at Q1, you will see that in our revenue monitoring reports. We will show that cost coming in. There are, as you'll see from the report, even the kind of those bits of increased general fund balance from where projects will happen later. There's plenty of money in the general fund balance, and therefore cabinet, took the decision that it was a good use in terms of ultimate climate goals to do that work, and to sort of take that hit on the general fund because it could be afforded within that general fund balance.
Thank you. So are we seeing some of that flow through into the paper today? Does this paper preempt some of that revenue impact, or will we expect to see a further adverse variance next period?
So we'll see a further adverse variance because it'll be a cost in 25-26, which is on top of what we budgeted in 25-26. So yes, we'll see an adverse position compared to the budget we set for 25-26, but enough capacity in our general fund balance to be able to afford that without having to look back at doing a new budget for the year.
Thank you.
Any further questions? If not, the recommendations are that finance, audit and risk comments on the assumptions and information contained within this report in the context that Cabinet agrees that 2.1, that Cabinet note this report, 2.2, that Cabinet approves a decrease of £860,000 in the 2024-25 net general fund expenditure as identified in Section 8 to a total of £17.889 million. 2.3, that Cabinet approves the changes to the 2025-26 General Fund budget as identified in the Table 4 and paragraph 8.3, a total £361,000 decrease in net expenditure. That Cabinet recommends to Council 2.4, that Council approves the net transfer to earmarked reserves as identified in Table 9 of £1.035 million. Can I please have a proposer? Councillor Publisingham, thank you. And can I have a seconder? Councillor Willoughby, thank you very much. Is there any debate from the committee? Nope, not see anything. So in which case then, could we please move to the vote?
That's carried.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to item 10, Investment Strategy, Capital and Treasury, End of Year Review 2024-25. Councillor Ward.
Just like to declare by usual declaration of interest in this item because of my employment, and I'll step out of the room for this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. Right, so I'll hand over to Ian Cooper to present.
Thank you. I'll try you more brief this time. So this is the combined capital and treasury report. Again, the end of year position. There have been some minor changes from the report between this version and the cabinet version, but nothing really to kind of particularly highlight to you, but there will be some changes if you do read both of them side by side. So in terms of the report, it starts off by covering our position on capitals estimates for the year. You'll note in table 2, again, there have been a number of items that have slipped between 24-25 and into 25-26, and the explanations provided there in the table for those. And then there are some capital projects, as noted in table 3, where the cost is slightly less or slightly more than what we were forecasting at the start of the year. One of those at the top there is around the vehicles, and that's kind of an accounting adjustment around a new requirement under accounting rules, so not particularly exciting. And then we go into the funding of the capital programme. We are in a position where we still have a negative capital financing requirement, so we still have surplus capital resources compared to what we spent, which means in terms of the 25-26 year, we do not have to charge minimum revenue provision in 25-26, and we've still got a bit of money spare to fund some capital program in this coming year. So that is a positive picture in terms of the council's budgets. But yeah, it is very small now. We have only got just over £500,000 left of those capital funding. So we are going to be in a borrowing position by the end of this year. That very soon this financial year we'll be in a borrowing position. And as previously discussed at this meeting and also when setting the budget at council, we will be currently planning to internally borrow, which means we use our cash reserves to fund the capital programme. And at some point we'll move that borrowing to be external, but we won't do that until we've seen a decrease in interest rates first. We can borrow at a cheaper rate before we do that. But I'm currently expecting that to kind of be a little way off in terms of it's looking like direction of travel on interest rates is downwards, and therefore it makes sense to keep on delaying that for as long as possible. Then paragraphs 8.10 onwards cover our treasury management position. As we've seen throughout the year, interest rates have been a lot higher than our original forecasts, albeit they are starting to come down now. So the report details that average interest rate of new deals during the year was 5.26%, and as at the end of the year on the 31st of March, it was 5.1%. We're now in the realms of the lower regions of 4%, so 4 to 4.5% is where most of our deals are at the current time. So you are seeing that decline in interest rates, albeit we forecast that in the budget there would be that decline. So it's not going to be an issue straight away. It's just sort of showing that the trajectory is downwards in terms of interest rates. I will just mention that we did have one breach of our sort of treasury management rules during the year. The balance on our current account was above our combined balance on our call account and our current account was above 5 million for one day. That was due to resourcing, I'll be honest. We're in a position where we've quite a lot leaving the team, and then someone had to take a short-term absence on the day, and therefore couldn't do the treasury deal to move it basically into government, where you put it into the debt management office, where you usually put money when we're over the limits. I am going to look at how we can do better with that, albeit we've got a small team and therefore there's only a certain level of resilience we can achieve. But I will look into what we can do to address that risk. There is also the attachment at Appendix A, which is the full kind of treasury management decision for the year, which I won't go through in detail. But if you want to, I'm happy to do so. So Appendix B rather than Appendix A. This report does get referred on to council because council are the ones that need to approve the position on our treasury management indicators for the year and confirm those.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee? John Cannon.
It's a detail, but the cover page of the report doesn't specify that this is for this council. This is for NHDC, right? It's got annual Treasury Management Review 24-25, English local authorities. So we're not operating or reporting on a pool here. This is indeed a report for NHDC. Please confirm.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Great.
So yes, no. It is our Treasury advisors produce the support on our behalf, and they have a standard template for English local authorities. And yes, it would be helpful, I guess, yes, if we did confirm that, yes, it relates to us and not just all English local authorities. But yes, all numbers relate purely to us, not to all English local authorities in total.
That's a good spot there. Completely missed that going through. Any further questions? If not, the recommendations that finance, audit and risk comments on the assumptions and information contained within this report in the context that Cabinet agrees that 2.1, that Cabinet notes expenditure of £11.362 million in 2024-25 on the capital programme, paragraph 8.3 refers. 2.2, that Cabinet approves the adjustments of the capital programme for 2025-26 as a result of the revised timetable of schemes detailed in Table 2, increasing the estimated spend by £5.202 million. 2.3, that Cabinet notes the position of the availability of capital resources as detailed in Table 4, paragraph 8.7, and the requirement to keep the capital programme under review for affordability. 2.4, that Cabinet approves the application of £3.787 million of capital receipts set aside towards the 2024-25 capital programme, paragraph 8.7 refers. 2.5, Cabinet is asked to note the position of Treasury management activity as at the end of March 2025. 2.6, Cabinet is asked to recommend this report to Council and ask Council to 1. Approve the actual 2024-25 prudential and Treasury indicators as detailed in Appendix B. 2. Note the annual Treasury management review for 2024-25 Appendix B. Can I please have a proposer? Councillor Poupler-Singham, thank you very much. And a seconder. Councillor Willoughby.
Happy to second.
Thank you very much. Is there any debate from the committee? Nope. In which case then, could we please move to the vote?
That's carried.
Very well timed, Councillor Ward. Item 11, Finance, Audit and Risk Committee Annual Report 2024-25. Hand over to Ian Cooper to present.
Thank you, Chair. This report is primarily a report to Council to hopefully provide reassurance to Council that this committee operates effectively and to let Council know what we've been up to for the past year. It also does provide actually quite a nice little guide to what the committee does in terms of what we've got coming up for you over the next year. So the structure of the report is the same as it's been in previous years. So we have an introduction from the Chair and covers kind of what the achievements have been during the year. Then goes to some of the detail around what the committee does. And then on page 157, we put in there the fact that we had an audit of the committee last year by SIAS on the effectiveness of the committee, and therefore picking up the actions from that audit and sort of confirming what's happened against those and showing the progress against them. So that's covered in there. That report did kind of comment on the fact that the committee does cover finance reports, as is also picked up in the peer challenge. And that's still a decision by full council to determine at some point if the role of the committee should change to sort of take those out, so the committee can just purely be a governance committee and focus on the kind of more governance items. But there are obviously implications of that in terms of where that does then fall, that work to review that. The top of page 158, I did ask members of the committee for some feedback on the previous year. I've reflected what I did get in there, but I've put in there with permission of the Chair that we have a discussion about that during this meeting for any further feedback. And there's also in the recommendations a delegation to myself in consultation with the Chair to make change to the report if there is any sort of outcomes from that discussion to reflect in this report before we publish it going on to full council. We then cover the achievements and what the papers we've considered during the year. There was a section in there that talks about that we managed to do 2 statements of accounts in 1 year. After some years of doing hardly any, 2 in 1 year is quite an achievement to be able to approve 2 of those. Hopefully from now on we'll do 1 a year, which would be quite a nice position to be in. And then on page 161, we've kind of set out the planned work for the year. So kind of things that are kind of maybe out of the ordinary. We have got a review of finance regs to take place in November. There have been a few years now since we've got to rewrote the finance regs to be a bit more succinct. We have done some minor updates since then, but probably worth with the new finance system, just kind of reflect on where we sit with those and make sure they're current and up to date. So we'll do a review of those at that point of the year. You may notice we've got the medium-term finance strategies in there in November. That's not definite yet, but the thinking behind sort of notionally putting it there is that we are due a 3-year assessment from government, which will get some indication of probably in early autumn around what that might be. And therefore it sort of makes sense to try and align a medium-term position for the council with actually more knowledge from government about what our funding might be. So it's possible to look at kind of a later medium term from that strategy than has been usually in previous years. And then, kind of then the rest of the budget process can still follow on from that, just kind of a shorter gap between that and then setting the budget for the next year. And yeah, so that's kind of the sort of broad scope of the report. Have to take any questions, but also encourage that kind of discussion around effectiveness committee in the last year, any comments we can make on that, and also any improvements we can make to how the committee operates.
Thank you for that. I think the thanks go to yourself and your team as well for, for us doing a couple of meetings to get statements of account out. I think the work that went in the background to get those prepared and ready. I think a lot of thanks has to go to the team for what would have been an incredibly stressful few months getting everything out and prepared. So well done there for that. Now hand that over to see if there are any comments, any questions, particularly again if there is any debate around the additions anyone would like to make in terms of comments on the committee, in terms of anything. I know one of the things probably this might no, it's probably worth doing it now, to be honest, is the discussion around the training in particular. Not so much whether we have it or not, but I know that the issue around when we have it and the manner in which it's held as well, because I know that clearly there is a it's not always brilliant having it before the meeting. So if there are any suggestions around that, anything anyone wants to put forward, again, yeah, very happy to take anything there. But yeah, open it to the floor in terms of any comments, questions, additions anyone would like to make. Councillor Willoughby.
Yes, the one observation I would make is that as you, I would reinforce what you said in your opening remarks in the report about you being probably the only experienced person on the committee at the point. And certainly, I think the committee has probably matured, shall we say, over the last year in terms of coming forward with questions and comments and feeling comfortable with what are actually very large reports in the main. And probably the most important thing is to be able to go into those reports and identify the salient points, because it's very easy just to read the whole lot and a lot of it is just repeated time and time again, isn't it? But it's actually identifying the important aspects and finding those questions that really need to be asked.
Yeah, if I could add on very briefly, yeah, that there was a slight concern, I think it's fair to say, last year when looking at the list of names, I was the only continuing member, given that I'm not exactly massively experienced myself, having been chair quite early on in my time in terms of representing the committee. But, personally, I've been very pleased with the level of engagement, particularly compared to in the past where we had more experienced members, but there was not always the same level of questioning, whether that is through everyone trying to get up to speed quicker. I don't know exactly how what we put down to, but I think the engagement has been very good, and like I say, everyone has, from my opinion, caught up very quickly to where we need to be asking questions. That goes for subs who appeared last year as well. I think we've been very fortunate on both front counts in terms of members and substitutes. But yeah, I think again the reports are often detailed as they need to be. So yeah, it's part of the skill is finding your place in there and finding the detail as well. Councillor Poopler-Singham.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I echo your comments about the work that goes into not just this report, but all the reports that we get on this committee. And it should be noted, there's a lot of work in the background that we probably don't see all of it, but it's all to the benefit for the council overall. Just to pick up on that training point, if you didn't do it before these file committee meetings, I'm kind of curious as to when we could legitimately schedule them that doesn't just add another question mark around another meeting or another training session, considering that there's other training sessions that already take place outside of these sessions before FAR, and it's just about council availability and council scheduling. I mean, I would have thought just before our FAR sessions or committee meetings are actually a good time, because you're already coming, or ostensibly we're all coming to the meeting, and you might just have to make a little bit more allowance on that same day that you're already going to be spending time here to attend a little bit earlier. The trade-off being, well, if you don't do it then, you're going to have to do it on another day, potentially. So I don't know what would be a better time, realistically. On a separate point, I did note in the report there that we have those opportunities to meet with the shared services. Maybe we should make use of those a bit more and just flag that we have those opportunities and actively promote encouraging those meetings to take place from members of the committee with those shared service provision.
Yeah, just on the point about the opportunities to meet. So it's something that I had struggled doing before. I've taken it this time in terms of meeting with the external auditors prior to this meeting, which is something I've been trying to do for a little while. And I think now we've got the new auditors in place, it kind of made sense to start building that relationship. So that, yeah, I definitely agree in terms of being able to speak to, I'm trying to think how best to put this, being able to speak to, those who are presenting, not just presenting to us, but actually, undertaking the services on behalf of the council, outside of the kind of, the formal committee meeting, to be able to go through, probably ask some more, as I did the other day, basic questions about the roles to get my head around things that maybe I probably should have asked previously, but don't always look too silly in front of the cameras. It is something I think we do need to take advantage of to be able to sort of have that conversation, understand things a bit deeper. So yeah, again, it's I think it's something I'd be quite happy to get involved in arranging if we can find a suitable time for everyone again. Or coming back onto that, obviously that brings with it the flip side to that, which is, yes, it would almost certainly be another evening, or other slots in time, which would obviously require us trying to find an available hour or so probably to undertake that. I think it's really again, this is why we want to have discussion. It's an open question to committee members really about what might work best. If everyone's kind of happy to have that extra slot in there, then great, we'll go for that. If not, then we just have to, again, Ian did raise this the other day about how we'll go around this. I think, fundamentally, we just need to find the outcome that agitates the least amount of people. There's no perfect outcome or solution. It's just whichever one works best for the majority, I suppose. But again, if there are any other views on that, Councillor Ward, I'll go to you next.
Yeah, thank you, Jared. I would personally agree with what you just said in terms of us trying to find the time, and I'm really quaking at the thought of more meetings. But yeah, no, the comment I was going to have is just about the overall effectiveness assessment and comments. I'm a sort of newbie here, relatively speaking, but I've very much valued and hopefully it's recognised the effectiveness of the independent member. So John, just thank you in terms of being extremely active in asking lots of challenging and poignant questions throughout all the meetings. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely echo that sentiment as well. Probably, the ability to cover that gap, and it's probably saying the only other member being the unelected member who was also continued on in that period of time as well. So, the resilience that's provided in terms of knowledge, and having seen the process a few times has meant that we've had at least someone other than myself who's seen it a couple of times, who's on as well, which has been very helpful. So yeah, again, thank you for your continued work within the committee. Councillor Brown.
As someone who doesn't know very much at all about governance, audit, risk, or finance, it's not really my area of expertise. And I joined this committee because it's one of the few I've never been on before. And dare I say, because there weren't a lot of people rushing to come onto it, might be fair to say. I've found the training sessions really helpful. I've made most of them, not all of them. Personally, I hate coming out early to evening meetings, but I can't see a better time to do it really. Because if you take up, you get another evening, you're just not going to get the turnout. So and I know not everyone's been able to make it at 6:30, but it's probably before a 7:30 meeting, but it's probably a better time than any other. And I haven't really got an excuse for not coming, so most of the time, and I have found it very helpful. So I think we should probably continue in that vein. I know we've taken different topics, and I don't know what has come out of the assessment of the self-assessment of councillors, and if there's going to be a plan of topics for next year. But to have sight of that early would be really helpful.
Yeah, so I received from Community Services the other day, a couple of days ago, what the that self-assessment survey. So it's quite a good response rate on there. So I will look through that and try and come up with some topics. Obviously, kind of it's marked. I kind of have a sort of 1 out of 5, so it's not going to get big variances in score, but I will see what I can find. Sort of the top themes that kind of look like they're most relevant. I was going to put an idea out there. So looking at my kind of vague plan for committee meetings moving forward, just as a kind of maybe slightly mad idea, where we've got shorter agenda items, sort of list of agendas. So the next couple of meetings, we've got 3 items on the agenda. There would be scope, I guess, if you want to start late, to do sort of after the meeting, if that would kind of fit better timing wise for some people. Obviously, we won't do that when we've always got a long agenda item, or you're looking at finishing quite late. But if we're looking at kind of doing something concise afterwards, particularly as me, because I'm here anyway, I would be happy to kind of do it after the meeting. Obviously, committee service would go and they could leave us to it to get on with stuff in the building. Don't want to keep them out late either. But if that was something that would work better for people, I could look at that as an option for those that do struggle to get from kind of London for the earlier training sessions.
Councillor People-Singham.
Yeah, thanks for that. Just on that topic of topics that we could discuss, just want to thank Ian for indulging me a little with his explanation during his previous report on business rates. That was helpful, but we could add it also to that topic agenda at some point as well, because I feel like there's a lot of details there that we could benefit from, and looking at how that, especially that new pool system and what you were alluding to about timing of using the pool system to our advantage as well.
Councillor Brown.
Coming back on the staying later, I certainly wouldn't be averse to that. I think if we know the agenda's going to be pretty short, then I'd be happy to stay till 10 o'clock personally. But I don't know how other people feel. I think I've probably got more flexibility than most, so it probably shouldn't be based on what suits me. But maybe we can mix it up a bit.
I think, yeah, in comparison to some other full council, 1 a.m. finishes at 10 p.m. is probably, it's not outside the realms of reasonableness, is it? No. So, I think that's probably quite, like you say, if there are times we can do that, at least to balance it out, I think that's probably a good solution to look at. It can't do it every time, obviously, but if it does work for that particular agenda, then I think that's definitely something we should consider. I think potentially testing it for the next one would be at least a test of it and see how it goes, and if we do get the turnout. Is there any further comments from anyone? Any questions at all? John Cannon.
Yeah, it's just interesting to hear the conversation. I did write to Ian when he invited us by email that this topic would come up today. And what I said to Ian was, I thought the committee works well. Conduct has never been an issue, despite the party political nature of it. The different views, and this conversation is kind of testament to that. It seems collaborative and focused on the council's business and the residents, and in some ways that surprised me. I thought it could have got a bit more sparky sometimes, but I can only speak for this meeting, this committee. So I don't know what goes on elsewhere. But but something that I mentioned to Ian is that maybe the format of the meeting has to follow a statutory order, and there are certain topics that have to be invited, have to be covered. But on the note of conduct and so on, we've never had debate. I think every time there's an agenda item, we do our Q&A and there's questions and answers. Then there's a prompt from the chair, is there any debate? And there never is. And to contrive a debate could be really, really disruptive, so long as we don't need to and there's no other material to tease out somehow during these meetings and everyone's getting what they need from the proceedings, then that's fine. But it struck me that, is there any debate? Is that the answer is always no. It's curious.
I think off from memory, from being chair, there might have been one, maybe two occasions potentially where it has, but that was, I can off the top of my head, maybe around the budget. Again, that's probably the only time where I can rethink where maybe the more party political element might sort of creep in because of the nature of how that then goes through into council, and obviously the fuller debates I think occur at full council for that. Again, in terms of conduct stuff, if you ever wish to go along to see particular planning committee sessions or ONS on occasions, maybe you might see a slightly different tenor to the proceedings. I'm again, part of the reason why I'm particularly pleased with the committee we have is we get the engagement. We do get challenge, both to officers and to others attending, but without any reversion to histrionics or anything like that. It's a good level of debate, a good level of questioning, a good level of sort of putting things forward. So I'm very, particularly as the chair, makes my life a lot easier that people are genuinely, respectful and working in the right ways. Never had to bang the hammer yet as well, which, hopefully I'll get to at some point, but hopefully for a positive reason rather than turn on to be quiet. Again, thank you, John, for the comments there. So, good, very good positive feedback. Council Ward.
Yeah, thank you. It might be just something to clarify for John, and the scrutiny officers might want to comment, but it took me months to understand this. I've only been here for a year. I think when the chair's saying, is there any debate, that's specifically debate related to the recommendations that we're about to vote on, as opposed to sort of general questions about the item from the presenter of the item beforehand. So that's why this is very sort of formalistic. Is there any, you have to read it out, is there any debate sort of thing. So whereas actually a lot of debate might have already happened before that.
Yeah.
I think that's right, isn't it? General, is how it works.
The theory there is that a debate then is the opportunity for not just debating of the recommendations, but also for any amendments that are then put forward. So it allows for the opportunity for formal changes to be proposed that can be then voted on. Again, I think it's, I couldn't remember off the top of my head going from the the full rules and regs and everything, but it's more, again, it is the process related to all proceedings that is set out for committee meetings and the full council itself. Again, from memory, I think we've had 2 amendments put forward in the time I've been chair, both of which we've sort of had the full debate voting on in terms of understanding the effect it would have on the recommendations. Again, very common in other forums, but less so here due to, I think, the nature of a lot of the reports coming forward. I'd probably propose on that front. But yeah, I think that Port Council Ward is saying it's kind of the pro forma, working through in terms of how things are set out. I'm sure someone who knows the Constitution better than myself here will be able to confirm or deny that. But I'll hand over to Ian.
Yeah, I'm not going to confirm or deny that bit, but I was going to say that I think the fact we've kind of changed some of the finance reports around budget and revenue monitor and the capital monitor to sort of look at the governance side of it, to be able to kind of refocus of that onto the kind of the process governance risk side of it. That kind of sort of in a way reduced the debate, because we're not talking about kind of the actual recommendations themselves, talking about the kind of the building blocks of those. And that, I agree with what the chair was saying, is that where we have had debate stroke alternative recommendations in the past, that has come from those particular reports rather than kind of the more governance-y reports. And it was kind of more that bit that probably is maybe outside the remit of the committee, kind of the way you're trying to reshape it.
Oh, John.
That's really constructive. Thanks for all that. The one thing I suggested in my note to Ian was, would it be worth having an actions log that we maintain between the meetings. So if there are requests for information or things that are to be followed up at a future meeting, could we keep a note of those beyond the minutes? The minutes capture it, but those items are buried in the minutes. So I try to keep track of the questions I've asked, and I try to recall them between the meetings. Could it be helpful to just tabulate those and keep a running tally of them from time to time? That's the one thing. The other thing, in taking this paper to full council, just might be worth topping and tailing it. I think there's a couple of typos here and there, but maybe the contents page needs a revamp just to bring the time periods up to date. It discusses meetings in 2023, 24. It probably needs to be 24, 25. There's a couple of those on there, and on the next page, you refer to the former external auditor, KMPG. It's just worth topping and tailing that before the paper goes further, I'd suggest.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'll get those corrected. In terms of dates, it does mess my mind in the support because I'm in that 3 different years at once trying to write the support. And I get confused which thing is for which year. Particularly we've got delayed audits as well, and there's like, oh, there's too much stuff going on to work out which year each one falls into. In terms of kind of an actions log, I guess that would fall to me to kind of keep on top of that. But yeah, happy to kind of do that because yeah, I also have been known to forget to do actions that have landed on me coming out of these meetings. So yeah, I'll happily look for the minutes when we're kind of collating them and kind of just keep a kind of a spreadsheet, because I love a spreadsheet, to keep track of those, and then make sure I do respond or get responses where it does fall to someone other than me to respond to them. So yeah, I'll check when we get the ones for this meeting that we've kind of captured the ones that should be on there.
Thank you very much, all. Is there anything further from the committee on this item? So the recommendations are 2.1, that the committee consider and comment on the annual reports of the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee as attached at Appendix A, particularly in relation to feedback on how the committee operated during 2024-25. 2.2, that the committee delegate to the director resources in consultation with the chair of the committee to make any changes to Appendix A arising from discussion of this report. That Finance, Audit and Risk Committee recommend to full council that 2.3, the annual report of the Finance, Audit and Risk Committee be noted. Could I please have a proposer? Councillor Pupler-Singham, thank you. And a seconder. Councillor Brown, thank you very much. Is there any debate? Just waiting for someone to put. I'm just waiting for the amendment to come forward now after that discussion. I can't imagine what it would be at this point, but if not, then could we please move to the vote?
That's carried.
Thank you very much. Move on to item 12, report on risk management governance year-end update. Hand over to Ian Cooper to present.
Thank you, Chair. This completes the set of the reports that go from here at the end of the year to Cabinet / Council or both. So this is the report on risk management governance during the year. So we get 2 reports to this committee during the year, the half-year report and the end of the year report. Hopefully because we've had feedback previously, the executive summary does provide an executive summary of the key points raised in the report. So that's the intention there, is that we do kind of provide some of that context around what's contained in the report in that bit. But in terms of some of the detail of the report, it does follow the usual one for these reports you've now mostly seen now a few times. So to pick out a few of the bits in there that have changed over time. So the first one to note is that in the table on 168 onwards, we've got the mitigating actions and ongoing controls in relation to our key most significant risks. So that's something we added new for the half-yearly report. And what we've also added at this time is that in the bold italics, we've kind of noted those changes of completing mitigating actions since that report. So to sort of try and show that things are happening against our risks. Even if risk scores don't move, there are actions trying to address them. So the actions are taking place. So we're going to try and keep that track there, so you can see what's going on with those. And we've also got the target risk scores in there as well to kind of see where risks may fall. You will note that some of our scores are we have a target risk score the same as the actual current risk score. In some cases, that's completely deliberate in terms of there is a limit to how much we can do against those risks. So, for example, cyber risk is the big one where we will never be able to say we're completely risk-free from cyber crime and impacts. So, therefore, that is a high-level risk. Some would say that therefore you should take the risk off because you've already got your target risk score, but I think it's still worth flagging that given its high risk score and its high priority that stays on the risk register. And there obviously clearly are still lots of actions we can do to try and get better. And some of those are set out in the report in terms of what's going on those. We then have the kind of general review of new and archive risks and the commentary around have we done our risk reviews on time. I think in general we have, and we've conformed to kind of the risk management policy around how we're going to do those reviews. We then, from page 172 onwards, we've got kind of a bit of commentary around our insurance position, business continuity, emergency planning, and then health and safety to kind of provide a bit of context on the wider story around risk, as we do have in these reports quite frequently. And then we've then got the actions we set for this report last year, the mid-year update and progress against those. And then we've got some new actions, so stemming the support to kind of try and improve our risk position going forward. So welcome your commentary and kind of comments and thoughts on those actions and proposals in relation to those. I will stop there and take any questions on the detailed report.
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
Thank you, and thanks for the detail, Ian. Just I guess one question on the top risk we have on financial sustainability, and the details of that are on page 171. I was just noting, I noticed that it said completed mitigation actions included the government confirmation of the 3-year settlement, which is either means you've got a hotline to Rachel Reeves or you knew about the 1.1%. I was just reflecting on the government's announcements today of the numbers that have been in the press. Does that affect, is that in line with your expectations? Does that change anything in terms of assessment of this risk on financial stability and the forward-looking budget, MTFS, etc.?
Oh, so I guess that what's reflecting is there will be one. There will be a 3-year settlement. So no doubt about hotline. So there will be one. That's the confirmation that there will be that increased certainty when we get it. We haven't had any information yet in terms of detail from government around what our 3-year settlement will be. That will follow. There's some consultation due to happen soon-ish in terms of how it will be structured. And then, as I kind of said earlier, expecting probably some initial indications about what our funding will be in the autumn. And then the usual Christmas present, probably on the 20th of December, around then, we'll get our actual provisional assessment for next year and 2 years after that for the first time in quite a long time. So no, that's not meant to imply that we have any information yet on the 3-year settlement, just that it's going to happen. And that is positive in itself, the fact we've got confirmation it will be happening, because too many years have happened with our 1-year settlements through both different kinds of government across all that whole period.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Any further questions at all? John Cannon.
I was just caught between whether the paper is wholly looking backwards at the governance of risk management for the 24-25 year, or indeed providing a status of those risks at this point, at this meeting. If you could clarify for me, please. Second, related to that, when will be the right time to recognise a potential risk of Churchgate funding. We've got Churchgate project risk, but now the design principles are out. Would there now be more movement, more clarity on funding risk for that big project, please?
In response to your first question, it's probably a mixture of both. He says sitting on the fence. Yeah, there is bits in there clearly around risk reviews taking place that are looking backward at the previous year and making sure those kind of processes around governance are taking place. But also, it's presenting a snapshot at a point in time. And whilst it kind of is flagged in a lot of reports about it being the 31st of March, actually we kind of reflect what's a bit more current than that where we can, because it provides a bit more of a current picture for what's going on. And I guess kind of the bit reflects in terms of the mitigating actions, that I guess is again both. It's kind of got what we've done by sort of highlighting what's happened, but also it's kind of got the complete picture about what we're looking at doing going forward at the same time. So yeah, it's probably a combination of all of that. And I guess thoughts on the committee would be helpful in terms of, is that helpful to you? Or is that too confusing in terms of them not providing a clear picture around what it's supposed to be providing? So I guess maybe not for now, but kind of a thoughts about either now a future discussion of this around, is it provide what you need in terms of being able to have that risk governance, because you are the governance committee, so therefore your thoughts on that would be helpful. In terms of Churchgate, we've got a report going to council soon around next steps on Churchgate. At one level, as long as it's prudent and affordable, we can always borrow for capital purposes. That's then my judgment as to whether it's prudent and affordable in terms of repayments of that. So the actual obtaining of funding, if it's the right scheme, is not an issue, albeit there will be choices around how we fund it, whether that is us just borrowing ourselves, looking at partners, and maybe then bringing funding to the kind of the project at the same time. So that is kind of, I guess, a later stage. But as a local authority, with my confirmation of those kind of statements around affordability and being prudential, we can always access funding through government for capital purposes. So there isn't actually a kind of funding risk there would be maybe for a private sector organisation.
Any further questions? Councillor Ward.
Thank you. It's it might be a request rather than a question, but not the corporate risks, but the service risks that are listed on page, where has it gone? I'm just looking at it. I've lost it now. There's like 40, there's a tape, there we go, page 171. The high rated ones, is there a log of those? I'm just intrigued to understand some of these more. Is there a log of what they actually are described as and what kind of risk or impact it is? Because there's a variety of things that these could mean in there.
One answer is I will repeat my usual statement about IdeaGen, about being accessible from our intranet. So if you go and log on, you can access IdeaGen with a guest login, and all our risks are on there.
Okay.
But if that is causing issues around being able to access that, then let me know, and I can also get details for you to kind of be able to provide that. We can do a risk log download out of that system and provide all the information there. But IdeaGen will always provide you the most up-to-date information. Tim Everett and my team will happily provide training on how to access it, and there is guest logins on the internet.
Thank you.
I suppose just one comment from myself. The new set out in terms of the detail behind those risks, particularly the completed and ongoing mitigation, is really useful. Definitely kind of a good addition, and I think it does solve a lot of the issues I had previously in terms of the general understanding, particularly I suppose key ones are coming out. So again, thank you for adding that in. Is there anything else from the committee at all? John Cannon.
Just to respond to Ian's remarks about whether the paper as it is useful, my response would be yes, it is. I got the vibe from it that it was both looking backwards and providing a snapshot, and it's good to have that confirmation that was intended. So to that extent, that wraps it up for me. But you did ask, so that's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you. If there is nothing else from the committee, then the recommendation that Finance, Audit and Risk Committee note and provide recommendations to Cabinet on this year-end risk management governance update for referral onto full council. Can I please have a proposer? Councillor Pupler-Singham, thank you. And a seconder. Council Board, thank you. Is there any debate? If not, could we please go to the vote?
That's carried.
Thank you. Item 13 is possible agenda items for future meetings. Oh, so we've had a fair bit of discussion today in terms of the committee and other things, particularly around training. But if there is, again, anything else that anyone has off the top of their heads that they've thought about in terms of additions to the agenda, again, if not, if there is something that pops up in between now and September's meeting, then myself, Ian, Vijay, if you've got anything you want to pass on to us and we can, add that into consideration, yeah, please do push it across. If there's nothing from the committee, then the next meeting is on Wednesday, the 10th of September. And I'll bring this meeting to a close at 21:27. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.